Well, the Congress was busy this weekend in Washington. I just started looking at the news, and I stumbled upon this article by Tom Angel called "Congress Creates Commission to Study Drug War Alternatives." I do read Tom Angel a lot, and Tom, if you're out there, thanks for all the great articles and keeping people informed. So Congress just ordered a comprehensive review of the failed U.S. approaches to reduce drug abuse and supply through prohibition-based interdiction programs, something we've been saying for quite some time. Early on Saturday morning, the Senate passed a bill creating a new commission that will be tasked with studying the impact of the war on drugs, with a focus on U.S. policy towards Latin America and the Caribbean. Among other topics, commissioners are directed to look at alternative drug policy models in the Western Hemisphere, which will likely include Uruguay's legalization of marijuana and enactment of drug decriminalization and harm reduction policies elsewhere. The move to create the commission is part of a broader House-based legislation authorizing programs under the U.S. State Department. The bill is now on its way to President Obama's desk. The Western Hemisphere Drug Policy Commission, new bureaucracy, just to put that out there, will be comprised of 10 members appointed by congressional leadership and the president, and is charged with submitting a report including findings and recommendations within 18 months. Is this starting to sound familiar? Because this is what happened when Nixon became president, and they did sort of the same thing only with marijuana, and the result of that was pretty bad. The report came back saying, hey, marijuana's safe. It's the safest thing there ever was. There's no reason why it should be illegal. In fact, we think it's medicinal. And Nixon put that in the paper shredder because the FBI said, well, hold on. We can't make marijuana legal because that's the one thing that we have to use against some of these groups that we can't really, silence any other way, like these protest groups that are protesting the war, the Black Panthers, so on and so forth. It's hard to find a way to put these people on the sideline if you take marijuana off the streets and make it legal. So that's just a little bit more history behind, when this all sounds good or whatever, but, at the same time, Trump could just get the report in 18 months, look at the findings, and maybe the guy he picked to be the commissioner or one of the people, the president gets to help pick the members. Maybe his person that he put in there is going to do something that might alter the effects of the recommendation. Who knows? Or he might just take the recommendation like Nixon and put it in the paper shredder. It's possible. Now, when you know the people involved in these actions and some of the other ones, you start to think, well, maybe there is something going on here, and it is bipartisan for the most part. The State Department's bill language creating the new commission closely mirrors standalone legislation long championed by Congressman Elliot Engel, and he said, quote, over the last few decades, we've spent billions and billions of taxpayer dollars on counter-narcotics programs in Latin America and the Caribbean. The Western Hemisphere Drug Policy Commission will force us to take a fresh look at our drug policy and make sure we have the best strategy moving forward. Engel said in a press release, we need to have an honest assessment of what has worked and what has failed as we consider how to spend our counter-narcotics dollars in the future. With heroin use on the rise here at home, our children deserve no less than a fair evaluation of our drug policy. And you know what? The thing about that statement is you don't know how real it is that kids these days, and I'm talking real young kids, can get on the internet and do get on the internet and are looking at these things in a more objective way than kids were ever able to do it before. Because they don't get just your hand-fed propaganda from the fascist state that says drugs are all dangerous unless we tell you they're safe. You get real facts. You look into real things about marijuana and you start to find out that there's a whole lot of stuff that the government ain't telling you, or that they're not telling you in general at school, or even in drug, what you would call education classes, or rehabilitation class, where you have to go take a drug class for some drug court or something. When these kids already know what's going on, and they already know that these laws are bullshit. So marijuana's illegality is definitely on very thin ice, to say the least. So our children deserve no less than a fair evaluation of our drug policy by you, the government, because we already have our evaluation, and the kids, they do too. They think that it's bullshit. You've been lying to kids about drugs forever, and it's time to stop. All right. In other Capitol Hill news, like I said, they were pretty busy. It was announced on Friday that legislators leading the charge for marijuana law reform will form a Cannabis Caucus when the 115th Congress convenes next month. So a Cannabis Caucus. A caucus is basically a group of politicians that are on Capitol Hill that basically actively advocate for a certain cause, obviously. And in this case, cannabis is the cause, and marijuana law reform is their main, I guess you would call it, overall theme. I hope. Here's a quote from Congressman Dana Raurenbacher from California, Republican. She says, there needs to be more strategy between us, those of us who are engaged in this, more of a long-term strategy. Now, she's in California, where medical marijuana has been around for a long time, and now they're about to embark on recreational marijuana. So, she's looking at it like, wow, we can't go back to the 90s when Bill Clinton was president, or even the 2000s when George W. was president, and they were raiding the dispensaries in LA County and elsewhere, and prosecuting people for medicine. And, she remembers those days. She says, we need to have a vehicle in which people on the outside will be able to work through and sort of have a team effort from the inside and the outside. I mean, that's code word for, we already know that there's, legalization efforts on the grassroots level out there. I mean, obviously they know about Marijuana Policy Project and other NORML. How can you not know about NORML? So basically saying that, for a while, they've been doing, their own work, and they haven't really had anybody inside the government to kind of help them pull some strings, or I don't even know what they are saying that they could do, but basically they could do a lot. I mean, when it comes to the DEA's scheduling of marijuana, that could be a good place to start, because in all honesty, man, it shouldn't even be on the CSA. And maybe that's one of the things we can get this Cannabis Caucus to look into. Congressman Earl Blumenauer, a Democrat from Oregon, and Thomas Macy, Republican from Kentucky, are also helping to organize the new caucus. With, I believe, Macy they were looking into him being the head of the chair of the caucus or whatever. Also on Friday, now this is a pretty big one. The next two items are pretty big. They have something to do with the new administration, and we are all, sitting here holding on tight to our chairs. we are wondering what's going on with this Trump administration, these people that he's picking. So on Friday, Congress passed a short-term extension of legislation funding the federal government, which is what they've been doing since Obama and beyond. They've just been reauthorizing the previous budget with a few things here and there, maybe added on to it, and it's just been terrible, the way that the budgeting of the government has been done, and basically almost as long as I can remember. I'm 45 now, years old. So this is a continuing the rider that prevents the Department of Justice from interfering with the implementation of state medical cannabis laws, and this is going to extend this through April 28th of 2017. It needs to go farther than that. I mean, this is just the one on medical cannabis laws. This is just when they did the budget and they said, okay, yeah, we're not paying for that no more. As far as we're not paying for you to conduct trials for and investigations and all this other stuff with the federal government to prosecute people for cannabis in medical cannabis states. So, you know, sign that thing permanent, first of all. If you get your caucus together or whatever and make that permanent, that should be priority number one. In fact, make it just continue to make it clearer and clearer that the federal government is not trying to interfere with states' rights on marijuana. And I do believe that was Trump's position in the primaries. That was one of his campaign promises or whatever. I mean, that's one of the things he said. If you look at all the things he said about marijuana, that one kind of sticks out. That's one of the more important ones. Because you're talking about recreational marijuana. Now, if you're talking about medical marijuana, Trump was basically for it. He said, I heard medical marijuana is good. I heard nothing but good things. So I don't see him really trying to do anything about that. And then you're talking about Jeff Sessions. The Senate Judiciary Committee announced that the confirmation hearing for the nomination of Jeff Sessions will be held on January 10th and 11th. So you remember Jeff Sessions. He's the anti-marijuana guy who has all kinds of colorful things to say about marijuana, to say the least. He's got some reefer madness that goes back to the 3rd century, I think. Anyway, Jeff Sessions is going to be looked at by the Senate in a hearing. And, you know, behooves me to maybe get some common sense if you're the Democrats and maybe ask them about the marijuana question, because that's what we all want to know. And you know what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be finding out about this hearing. I'm going to be finding out who's going to be doing the hearing, who's going to be asking the questions, and so forth. And I'm going to write them a letter or call them on a phone and be like, yo, we need to know where Sessions stands on this marijuana stuff. Because guess what? There's millions and millions and millions of medical marijuana patients. And there's, you know, now we have like 8 states and DC that have recreational marijuana laws. So the game is over. You know, what do you plan on doing, Mr. Sessions? How do you plan on moving forward on this marijuana thing, Mr. Sessions? What do you plan on doing with states that have made recreational marijuana legal, Mr. Sessions? Are you going to go after people in medical marijuana states for marijuana laws? Because there's some places where in medical marijuana states and recreational states too, I believe, I'm not sure. Oregon, maybe Colorado for sure. Yeah. So anyway, what I was talking about is massive grow operations that are hundreds of plants or even thousands or 10,000 plants or more, you know. The DEA used to be known, or you could look it up and it's on a piece of paper, but the DEA really don't go after a marijuana grow unless there's 100 plants, you know. And when you look at what their plant levels are, when you start getting into the tens of thousands of plants, it's kind of like basketball scores, you know, for prison sentences. And, you know, that's just the way it is. That's the way drug laws are written, and that's the way penalties for breaking drug laws have always been. And that's one of the biggest problems with the drug war, is for the most part, these drug crimes are nonviolent. And if they are violent, well, guess what? There's already laws there to cover that part of it. So you could already, you know, add that to it. Oh, the guy was shooting a gun, shooting at people, and he had a bag of crack on him or whatever. You can give people sentences that match their crime. When it comes to these drug crimes and people getting busted for drugs, it never matches the crime. The sentence is always ridiculously long or hard or harsh, or you hear it and you're just like, wow, why do you got to do that? You know, you're just ruining this person's life. And that's all I got for this story. Please subscribe if you like my videos, and stay tuned for updates on all these stories and all my stories.